All right, today we're diving into the state of human rights in the world's largest democracy. We're going to be breaking down the key findings from this really compelling report, Voices of Justice, which, well, it chronicles the incredibly complex reality on the ground in India.
So we're kicking things off with this powerful idea from Nelson Mandela. Why? Because it just gets right to the absolute heart of what we're talking about today. You know, it's a reminder that human rights, they aren't just some dry legal concepts. At the end of the day, they're about the fundamental dignity that belongs to every single one of us.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start with the big picture, a universal promise, and then zoom right into the Indian context. After that, we'll look at challenges to free expression, move on to protecting vulnerable groups, and wrap it all up with the quest for accountability. Let's get into it.
All right, first things first. Before we go any deeper, let's make sure we're all on the same page. What do we actually mean when we talk about human rights?
Well, at their very core, they're universal. And what that means is they belong to everyone, everywhere, no matter who you are. The only requirement? You have to be human. It's a simple idea, right? But it's also incredibly profound. And it's the bedrock of so much modern international law.
And these are the big ones, the principles that really form the foundation of any just society. I mean, you've got the right to life and liberty, freedom of expression, things we often talk about. The crucial thing to remember is that these aren't just nice-sounding ideas. They're actual, internationally recognized standards that nations have pledged to uphold. Okay, so now that we have that universal foundation laid out, let's bring our focus much closer to home, to the specific context of India. How do these big global principles actually look inside its national framework?
And the answer is, that commitment is absolutely central. It's not some afterthought. It's woven directly into the very fabric of India's constitution from way back in 1950. This document, it guarantees a whole set of fundamental rights that, you'll see, directly mirror those universal principles we just talked about. It's a powerful promise of justice for every citizen.
But, you know, having rights on paper is one thing. Making them a reality is another story entirely. So now let's dive into one of the key areas the report highlights where those rights are really put to the test, the challenges to freedom of expression.
So take a look at this number. Over 100. That's how many internet shutdowns the Voices of Justice report recorded in just a single recent year. Let that sink in. We're talking about a practice that directly, and I mean directly, impacts the free flow of information and, of course, online expression.
The report also breaks down a pattern of how certain laws are reportedly used. It often starts like this. A journalist or an activist publishes something critical. Then, step 2. A case gets filed against them, frequently using laws around things like sedition or public order. And the final step? Well, this often kicks off these really long, drawn-out legal battles. The report points out that this whole process can create a kind of chilling effect on free speech, no matter what the final verdict ends up being.
All right, let's shift gears a little. We're now going to focus on another really critical theme from the report, the rights and, more specifically, the challenges faced by some of the most vulnerable and marginalized communities. And this table, wow, it just brilliantly illustrates a central tension, right? On one side, in one column, you have these incredibly robust constitutional safeguards, things like freedom of religion, or Article 17, which officially abolishes untouchability. But then you look at the other column, and that's where the report details the tough, on-the-ground realities, things like communal violence, persistent discrimination, and conflicts over land and resources.
So that begs the question, right? When these challenges pop up, where do people actually turn for help? And that brings us perfect to our final section, this quest for accountability, and the role that key institutions are meant to play. The report really points to two main pillars of accountability here. First up, you've got the judiciary. Its job? To uphold all these fundamental rights and interpret the laws. But the source also notes some big challenges, like massive backlogs of cases, which can mean justice gets delayed. And then there's the National Human Rights Commission. This is a body set up specifically to monitor and investigate violations. The challenge here, as the report describes it, is that its powers are often more advisory, with pretty limited ability to actually enforce its findings.
So when you take a step back and look at the whole picture, this seems to be the crucial point. The issue isn't a lack of promises. The promises are right there, written into the Constitution. The real heart of the matter is this persistent, really complex gap between those powerful rights on paper and the immense challenge of making them a lived, day-to-day reality for every single person.
And that leaves us with a final and pretty crucial question to think about. And, this isn't just about one country. It really goes to the heart of any democracy. How does a society close that gap? What does it really take to turn promises written on paper into actual, tangible justice for every single citizen? Definitely something to chew on.